What is going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today we're going to be looking at the R.A.D ONE. So this shoe is relatively new on the cross-training shoe scene. They dropped at Wodapalooza. There has been a ton of hype around these shoes, and 4 things that I have found to like about this model is number 1, this is a very solid all-in-one style of cross-training shoe. So really, I've been wearing these in pretty much every session I've had over the last few weeks, and I haven't noticed any issues with this model in regard to stability, versatility, durability. Like, this is a shoe that I trust for a lot of my training, which is often not the case with some cross-training shoes that are more focused on certain niches. So if you are looking for a good all-in-one shoe, I think the R.A.D ONE is a nice one to look at. The second thing to like about this model is I like the Swell Foam midsole that R.A.D uses in the shoe. So it's basically like their proprietary midsole tech and feature that they use in this model. And I think it walks a really good line between being stable and versatile. So if you want this shoe for heavy lifting, CrossFit, or even just tackling HIIT workouts and some classes, this model's midsole I think will do a really good job. Plus, they responsibly sourced this material, so it's really cool to see R.A.D getting into being a bit more responsible with the materials used in their shoes. And on their ethos page, they talk about how they're going to continue to innovate there. So I think that's really cool. The third thing to like about this model is I love that the rubber outsole wraps the entirety of the midsole here. So that I think adds a lot of durability to this shoe and its potential in general for different activities. Like with rope climbs, I don't think you're gonna have an issue with midfoot breakdown. You have a nice extended outsole layer up here on the toe for additional durability. And I've worn these things for like pickleball where I'm dragging my toes a lot, cutting a lot, going side to side. And I love that the outsole wraps up and provides additional traction and just overall support from that foam midsole breaking down. I have had plenty of cross-training shoes break down on the pickleball court, and I know that's not what they're intended to be used for, but I think that's a great tool and metric to scale like cutting and side to side work, especially when foam on shoes is pretty dang close to the ground. The fourth thing to like about this shoe is that I like the overall silhouette and the branding of this model. So the shoe comes in 2 colorways at the moment, and just the overall silhouette and appearance of the shoe I think is a really solid. So like, I like wearing these on a daily basis, and I've actually had 2 people at the gym ask me what kind of shoes these are. So I think that's a good sign as well. Plus there's like no over-the-top R.A.D branding on this model. So we have R.A.D branding on the outsole, some down here at the bottom of the tongue, and then some up here at the top of the tongue. And that's relatively it. We have an imprint back here in the posterior lateral heel, but these shoes aren't like super loud. You don't like have like this huge glaring logo on them. Noble. And overall, I really like the silhouette and appearance of this shoe. I think it has a really good like classic training shoe look to it while also delivering a strong performance. Now, let's talk about a couple of cons I have noticed with this model. So when it comes to cons, there are actually not a ton of cons that come along with this model. Like truthfully, this has been one of my favorite pairs of cross-training shoes over the last year. But 2 things that I could see folks running into issues with this model is number 1, the sizing. So on R.A.D's site, they recommend sizing up a half size, and you can also reach out to them to get a better idea of what size to go for. If you have a thicker foot, I think you may run into an issue with the volume up here in the toe box. Overall, I got a 10. I normally wear a 10. I did that for continuity purposes, and they fit fine. Like, I have a little bit of room in the toe. Honestly, I don't think I would want to go up to a 10.5, but I could definitely see like just the overall volume and its tightness being a problem for folks with thicker or wider feet. So you may definitely want to size up a half size, or just reach out to R.A.D, play it safe, and get a better idea of what sizing to look into. The second potential con I could see folks having with this shoe is that since R.A.D is a relatively new company, they obviously don't have a ton of different colorways on the market. So if you are not a fan of the 2 colorways that they currently offer, I could see that maybe being an issue with just the overall aesthetic and how much you like this shoe. But again, from a more performance overview of this shoe, they have been really solid, and I don't really have any issues with their stability, versatility, or even like glaring durability things that I'm even concerned with. So from a performance point of view, I have no big cons with this model, mostly just the aesthetic for some folks who may not like the colorways offered, and some potential folks who might run into sizing issues. So when it comes to performance, I'm going to talk about how the R.A.D ONE does with lifting, more versatile training, shorter runs, and then daily wear. So when it comes to lifting, I really like this model. Pulling over 500 pounds in this shoe was no issue, and I like how stable they are for different movements like lunges and squats. I think if you plan to train heavy in a cross-training shoe, this is a good model to look into. The Swell Foam midsole I think walks a good line between being stable enough to support your heaviest lifts, but also versatile enough to where you can use them in more dynamic sessions and not beat your feet up. Plus, I really like that extended rubber outsole wrap throughout the entirety of the shoe because you get a lot of traction on different surfaces. So if you're training indoors or lifting outdoors, you shouldn't run into issues of traction or breakdown with this model's midsole and outsole. When it comes to more versatile training, I also really enjoy the shoe. They break in relatively quick and you get a nice reactiveness up here in the toe box. So as a whole, I like using the shoe for more athletic focused sessions where I'm doing a lot more plyos, cutting, or anything that's a bit more agility focused. Not every cross training shoe excels in those settings, but if you're looking for something that can be stable but also really excel for more athletic focused work, plyos, even classes, this is a good model to look into. Plus with the upper construction, it breathes decently well, and I don't think you're gonna have a ton of issues with breakdown in the upper for more versatile training. So as a whole, I do like this model for versatile training, and I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here, but I do like that midsole in this shoe. And again, I don't think it's gonna be a shoe that beats up your feet if you're doing a ton of plyos in this model. For shorter runs, this model works. What I would say is, like, if you're tacking on 1 to 2, maybe 3 miles before or after your sessions, or if you have runs programmed in your WODs, this model will work really well. But obviously it's a cross-training shoe. It is a bit more stable in nature, so it's not gonna be the best bet for longer runs, but for shorter runs, this is one of the better pairs that walks that good line between being versatile, stable, and also a decent shoe for shorter runs. For daily wear, I like this shoe, but to be honest, I've actually been trying to limit how much I've been wearing them on a daily basis because I want them to last. But with that extended outsole, you're gonna get a nice level of durability because it's going to protect that foam midsole from different elements. So for example, like some cross-training shoes have that exposed foam throughout the midsole, and that's usually not an issue until you run into like things like dirt and wetness and stuff, and then that can start to break down that foam and the polyurethane that connects the foam to the outsole, to the upper, etc. So with this model, I don't think you're gonna run into issues there. But again, like, I just try not to wear my favorite cross-training shoes on a daily basis because I don't even want them to break down at all or ruin their durability. So this model will work, but again, like, I want this shoe to last. They're comfortable, and I don't want to ruin them by wearing them out and about and having the elements of the weather break this shoe down. So now let's answer the question, who is the R.A.D ONE best for? So what type of athlete, what type of lifter? I think if you are somebody who doesn't want to think about the type of shoe they are wearing for the training sessions that they are going into, the R.A.D ONE is a really good model. I don't think a lot of cross-training shoes play really well in all these different realms of activity, but the R.A.D ONE has done an exceptional job across the board, and I do think the hype is worth it for this model. So that being said, for the lifter and athlete that wants a great CrossFit shoe, a great cross-training shoe for their heaviest lifting sessions, even some athletic focused work, the R.A.D ONE is a good model to look into. Plus, I believe in the brand and how they are trying to use more responsibly sourced materials, which is also a big plus, especially coming from a smaller company. So when it comes to sizing and fit in the shoe, we touched on it briefly earlier, but R.A.D recommends going up a half size on their site. What I would suggest doing is to just reach out to R.A.D and ask, because they also offer that on their site, and then that way you could be safe and not drop $150 for a pair of shoes that fit way too tight. When I got these, I went true to size, so I went with my normal size of 10. I had on a thinner pair of socks and they fit fine. And then like 2 days later, I put on a thicker pair of socks and I was like, okay, they are a little bit snug up here in the midfoot and toe box after I was wearing them for a couple of hours. So that being said, if you are an athlete and lifter who I think has a bit more room in the toe box normally in regard to length, you probably will be safe going true to size. However, for most folks, you might want to go up a half size and just listen to R.A.D's recommendations or reach out to them to play it safe. That way you don't invest in a model that is way too tight, then you have to return it, and it's this whole thing. So I totally understand the frustration with sizing and getting it wrong. So definitely reach out to R.A.D if you are unsure on what to do. So chatting on price, for the R.A.D ONE, you can expect to pay $150 USD. Now that is slightly more expensive than other cross-training shoes on the market, and if you are really trying to save money, you could definitely shop around for great budget-friendly options, a lot of which I have covered on the channel, but I do think that price point is worth it for this model, especially if you're somebody who wants that kind of like best of all worlds style of shoe. All right guys, now let's talk on the weight, heel to toe drop, and insole in the R.A.D ONE. So for my size 10 model here, we have a weight of 12.7 ounces. We have a removable insole in this shoe, and the heel to toe drop in this model is 6 millimeters. All right, guys, now let's go over the construction of the R.A.D ONE. So up here on the toe, we have an extended outsole layer that wraps up. I like that for durability purposes. And then as mentioned before, the entirety of the shoe here is wrapped with this rubber outsole layer that kind of comes up. So we have like this rubber here, and then it's another layer of rubber right here that protects what would normally be like an exposed midsole. So I really like that for durability purposes. Plus this wrap right here gives you a little bit of extra traction for rope climbs. We have a Swell Foam midsole in this model, and that's basically R.A.D's like proprietary midsole feature that they use. It's a bit more responsibly sourced, and I think it walks a really good line between being stable and versatile. Throughout the entirety of the upper, we have a synthetic and textile as mentioned on their site. We have an additional layer here throughout the toe box, which I personally, again, like for durability, especially if you're gonna be dragging the toes in burpees or in any form of sprint work that you're going from like prone to sprint. We also have some breathable material here on the lateral and medial side of the shoe, and then back here on the boot, we have some reinforced structure so the boot feels pretty stable as a whole. Running up the midfoot, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eyelets that run up. The tongue is perforated. It is a little bit thicker in nature. I haven't noticed any issues with it sliding, and it breathes decently well. And I also like the little bit of additional padding here, truthfully. Like, I think it adds like a nice like protected feel to this shoe. Looking at the tongue itself, we have some R.A.D ONE branding, some R.A.D branding down here, and then also some R.A.D branding back here on the posterior lateral heel. Making our way to the insole, once again, the insole in this shoe does come out. So if you want to put in your own insole, you certainly can. What I would just suggest is that if you do have like a thicker insole, then you're definitely going to probably want to size up to ensure you're not capped with the volume in this model. Making our way to the outsole, we have R.A.D branding right here, the R.A.D logo right here, and then a similar rubber tread throughout the entirety of the outsole. Personally, I like this tread. I haven't had any issues with grip yet on different surfaces, so whether I was outdoors or indoors, the rubber outsole has done a pretty great job across the board, keeping me on my feet. If you have any questions on this model's construction, drop a comment down below and I will answer whatever you have. All right, guys, that wraps up my review of the R.A.D ONE. For a first pass and like a first go-to-market shoe, I think this is a fantastic model, and I've been very impressed with this shoe's performance. I'm also super stoked to see Joel's thoughts from as many reviews as possible on this model, because I'm always really interested to see his thoughts on brand new shoes to the market. So keep an eye out for that. He should be publishing one soon. But that all being said, guys, if you have any questions on this model, drop a comment down below, reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, guys, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.